Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Overload the Middle. Today, I want to bring Mohamed Kudus into the spotlight and I want to compare him with the other player who's been touted as being Arsenal's number one target, Rodrygo. If you haven't seen it already, I did a comparison of Rodrygo versus Nico Williams a couple of weeks ago. If you want to check that out, feel free to do so. It's on the channel. But this time I want to compare Kudus with Rodrygo. And just looking at the pros and cons and basically doing a deep dive to which one of them will fit into Arsenal better and be more successful at Arsenal. Kudus is a player that I kind of feel sorry for. He was at Ajax and he was basically really doing well at Ajax to the point where I thought it was inevitable that one of the big six clubs would go in for him. Unfortunately, they didn't. Why they didn't? I'm going to look into it a little bit today and speculate to why big clubs so far haven't really touched Kudus yet. The only team from the Premier League that showed an interest was Brighton. However, Kudus, because I feel like his ambition was a top six club, wanted to ensure there was a release clause in his contract. So if a big club did come in for him, he could basically go. But Brighton being Brighton, and we know how shrewd they are in the transfer market, you know, Caicedo is just an example of many players that they've brought in from nowhere and made big money on. Brighton weren't going to limit themselves to a release clause because Brighton are not one to play with in the transfer market. So West Ham stepped in and West Ham picked him up and ensured that there was a release clause in his contract. And the release clause at the moment is 100 million euros, which is 84.3 million pounds. The only thing about the release clause, which is weird, that it's only triggered for a short window of time from June to, I think, the middle of July. I believe it's the middle of July, which is weird because you'd think if someone has a release clause in their contract, it should be for the entirety of their contract, right? But no, the release clause is only for a certain window of time. So now Kudus has got 2 seasons under his belt in the Premier League. You'd feel like now's a good time for him to go to a top Premier League club. Arsenal have thrown their hat into the ring and basically said to West Ham, look, I know you've got this release clause of 84.3 million, but we ain't going to pay that because we don't think he's worth that. We believe he's worth anywhere between 55 to 60 million euros, which is the equivalent of 46.3 million to 50.5 million pounds sterling, GBP. In the last week, you know, we've Arsenal fans have been looking at Man United, who brought in Mbuemo, Liverpool looking like they're doing business. Everyone's looking like they're doing business but Arsenal. But the thing with going in for Kudus in particular is that they have to wait until I feel like mid-July before that release clause is no longer valid. And then they can come in at, I would say they'll probably get him for around about 50 million. I remember seeing like videos of Kudus at Emirates Stadium watching Arsenal games, so I know he's definitely interested in coming to the carpet at Emirates. However, the question is, if you line him up against Rodrygo, which one is the better player? Which one is the player that will fit into an Arteta system? So let's get into it. The thing with Kudus is that he's a typical Arteta signing. He's a multifunctional player that can play in a various amount of positions, from right wing. He's predominantly left-footed, by the way. So right wing, can play as a striker, and he can play as a left or right 8. When I started playing with him in FC25, my biggest gripe when I started, as you can see, his weak foot now is a 4 out of 5. But when I purchased him from West Ham, it was only 3. The problem is that he's not going to take Saka's position, and he's not going to block Nwaneri's progress as the backup to Saka on that right wing. So the only place to play him, and obviously the place that we need to fill, which is left wing, which is left wing position. For the first couple of games, it was a bit frustrating because he's on his left foot, cutting in from an inside forward position on a left wing. So we know that naturally you'd want somebody with a stronger right foot. So I went to work on him in FC25, did some development work on him. Now he's a 4 out of 5. He's a lot more stronger on his right foot. And as you can see, he's starting to bang in these goals. Concerns I have with Kudus is that, similar to Gyökeres, is that he's a big space player. He's a player that will thrive on the counter. He's the type of player that in a possession based system where we know Arteta plays that. He's the kind of player that wants too many touches on the ball. If we look at his passing is a concern. He's only at 74. And that is reflected in real life where it's weird because he's got a good vision. If you look at his vision now, his vision is coming in at 78, which is fairly good. It's close to 80, but his passing is only at 74. Now, in my experience playing with him is that funny enough, he's actually doing well in terms of leading the assist charts this season. He's doing really well. But having done a bit of research into him, he regularly has his head down. He regularly takes too many touches, warranted for, just kind of finding the right pass and passing it off. He very much wants to dribble himself out of problems as opposed to pass himself out of problems. Is that something that could be rectified with training and coaching from Arteta? Definitely. We know that playing with better players and playing in a system that Arteta will ensure will hide any of those deficiencies, as well as the coaching that he will get, will definitely improve him. You could see, no disrespect to West Ham, but he should be better than he is at this age. Because right now, I feel like the last 2 seasons has been a bit of an arrested development for Kudus because he hasn't pushed on from his Ajax days. Let's say that, his passing should definitely be at least 6 points higher than it is. He should be on the 80 for passing. Can he improve? I believe he can. So those are the things to think about. Shooting, right now. Once he develops his right foot, he's going to be dangerous. Left foot, right foot, it don't matter when it comes to shooting. Pace is great. The thing I feel like, in my opinion, that really stands out for him, and I feel like something that, especially with Arteta insisting that everybody tracks back, everyone defends, everyone pushes forward, is his defending numbers. His defending numbers at 61 and his physicality is at 74, more importantly, which I feel like is really beneficial, especially in the fact that he is Premier League proven now. He's not just coming in from a European club and we're going to have to wait 12 to 18 months for him to transition to the Premier League speed and physicality. He's already had 2 seasons under his belt at West Ham. So in that sense, he's less of a risk versus Rodrygo, for example, who I'll get onto in a minute. Looking at his strength as well, and stamina at 74, which isn't too bad. I mean, it could be better, but it could definitely be worse, especially as somebody who will be playing as a left winger. Strength is good as well at 77, so he's not the type of player to be bounced off easily off the ball. He's got good agility, good balance, good acceleration. Aggression is actually quite good as well at 68. He's not he's going to be able to give us as good as he gets. Composure is good as well. So I feel like if he can be better at his passing, if he can be prepared to look up, a lot more and find, we're not saying that he needs to, we're not looking for another Özil. We're not looking for someone who's going to unlock the door and find a needle in the haystack. I don't think his passing is a deal breaker. However, I do feel like, especially playing in a possession-based system, he's going to have to adapt to that quickly. He's going to have to adapt to not always trying to get out of trouble by dribbling. And that's something that I'm sure Arteta will coach him out of. Okay, so looking at Rodrygo and comparing him with Rodrygo, we can see that he's technically beautiful. Pace 89, shooting 83, passing 81, dribbling 89. He's just ticking all from a technical perspective. He ticks all of the boxes: acceleration, sprint speed, agility, balance, all of it. He's been reported to be coming in at something like, let's say, 85 to 90 million. Yeah, coming in at 85 to 90 million in terms of what Real Madrid are going to be asking for. However, as I mentioned before in when I did a Rodrygo Nico Williams deep dive, my concerns are very much in terms of his defending and his physical attributes. Defending is coming in at 32, physical is coming in at 64, which for me in the Premier League, no. He's 5'9" in height, very slender build. You can see he's going to struggle. It's going to take him at least 12 to 18 months to get to the speed and physicality of the Premier League. So is there any way that Arteta can mitigate these glaring weaknesses? I'm not sure. Anywhere that you play him, he's going to be roughed up. Now, if you decide to play him as a forward, let's say for example, or as a false nine, he's going to be clattered, and I don't know, he hasn't got that physical presence. Anyway, Sesko is going to be front and center in terms of that position in any case. But playing him on the left, especially if he's double marked, he's going to have problems. A lot of players will rely on their technique to try and get out of situations, and don't get me wrong, he's going to bamboozle a lot of defenders. However, he's going to get to a point where defenders are going to be like, you know what, we're just going to kick him. We're just going to kick him, or we're just going to physically make it impossible for him to get any kind of momentum or flow into the game. If I go back and look at Saka, for example, and just even compare the two, the thing with Saka, let's go and have a look at him. Yeah, the thing that is so different with Saka is that he's got a physical of 73, he's got a defending of 60, he's got a strength of 68, and an aggression of 68. So he's very difficult to knock off the ball. And even now that people are double marking him up, he still gets the better of his defenders. Yeah, even when they double marked him. So if we go back to Rodrygo now, Rodrygo he's gonna have a tough time, and I think he knows that because there's been a lot of noise about him wanting to stay at Real Madrid. We look now at his physical compared to even Saka. There's a big difference there. And also his strength, and also his aggression. His aggression's at 53. Now, he's got to know when he comes into the Premier League, he's got to be able to give as good as he gets. And aggression at 53, he's going to be bullied, man. As much he's a maverick, technical maverick of a player, a beautiful player. I just don't see it in the Premier League, and it's tough because more than anything, I would like to see him at the carpet at the Emirates, because I feel like the Premier League needs a player like this in the Premier League. But similar to someone like Özil, he's only going to be able to show his real talent in certain games, because there's certain games where he's not going to be allowed the space or allowed the liberty to be able to really express himself on the pitch, especially teams that are going to play low block against us, which are going to be mid-table and below, even higher up the table. A lot of teams will come to the Emirates and just low block us. How will he get on then? Is his technical skills enough for him to be a success at Arsenal? That's something actually I want you to answer in the comments. Is Rodrygo's technical skills enough? Is there a way in which Mikel Arteta can protect him on the pitch? Is it a case where he's going to need to have someone like, I don't know, Declan Rice next to him to be that enforcer that allows him to play? But then if that happens, then we're a man down in the middle of the pitch. So he's gonna have to go to the gym. He's gonna have to pump that iron on a daily basis, and he's gonna have to really bulk up if he's gonna come to the Premier League and succeed. Because looking at a strength of 59 and then comparing that to Kudus, whose physical at 74 and has a strength of 77, it's night and day. And the difference is, again, Kudus is Premier League proven. He's Premier League ready. There's no adaptation period for Kudus. He can come in today and make a difference. The question is, do you want someone that's highly technical but doesn't have the physicality, or do you want someone that has good technicals, not great technicals, but good technicals, but also can also back it physically? And I feel like that's the balance that Arsenal with Berta and Arteta have to decide. Where is it going to be? Because I'm just not seeing how Rodrygo. I'm not excited by Rodrygo, and I should be excited by Rodrygo because, again, he's technically gifted. But then I go back to Arsenal versus Real Madrid, and Lewis Skelly had him in his pocket. He didn't get no change from Lewis Skelly playing out there on the right hand side. Now the argument's going to be, he was playing out of his position. He's naturally left-footed. So he wasn't. The man is ambidextrous. He can play on both feet. So that's not an excuse to say, well, he didn't get any change out of Lewis Skelly because he's playing out of position. He can play left, he can play right. He's as strong on his right foot as he is on his left. So for me, that's not, and there's no excuse in that. The difference is that a man like Lewis Skelly just out physiqued him, out muscled him, didn't give him any hope that he could do any damage on that side of the pitch, to the point where Lewis Skelly was comfortable enough to invert as a midfielder and still know that Rodrygo wouldn't cause any problems. Now, my question is, if an 18-year-old, as good as Lewis Skelly is, don't get me wrong, but if an 18-year-old can have Rodrygo up like that, what's he going to do against the rest of the Premier League? Right? What's he going to do against even your Aston Villas, right? Your Aston Villas. I'm not even thinking now about your Newcastles, your Bournemouths away from home. For me, the only teams that he'll probably do well against, I can't even say Tottenham anymore because they just sacked Ange, and we don't know how Tottenham are going to play next season. But he will do well against any team that wants to push up high against us and where he has plenty of space. That's the only time where he'll do well. But as we know, everyone that comes to Emirates, more often than not, is going to low outside of your Liverpools and your Cities and your Villas and your Newcastles. Outside of those teams, everyone else is coming to park the bus and low block us. So I don't see how Rodrygo works in the Premier League. If you disagree, if you feel like he does, let me know in the comments, and we'll go back and forth in the comments about it, because I'm just not seeing it. So if anyone can tell me of why Rodrygo would work in the Premier League, please just jump in the comments, and we'll chop it up in the comments on that. So again, looking at the opportunity cost, Kudus is far more favourable, especially if we can get him for 50 million, versus Rodrygo, where we're looking 85 million upwards. Yeah. Looking at it from adaptation, Kudus is Prem ready. He's got the physique about him. For me, the only downside, and it's both. It's having done my research and looking at the game as well, his passing needs to come up. His passing needs to come up, because at 74, playing in a team that is a possession-based team, his passing has to come up. That's the only downside for me. If I'm going to compare the two, I'd be more comfortable with somebody that needs to maybe improve on their passing, but has everything else. Has pace, has the shooting, has the dribbling, has the physique, has the two-footedness, than somebody who is technically perfect, but gets bounced off the ball and has no physical presence, no physical strength about them. And as I said in a prior video, for me, he's playing in the right league. He's playing in the league which is at a slower pace, and the league which will give him a lot more space to run into, as opposed to the Premier League, where it's compact, it's aggressive, and it's intense. He doesn't come across as the kind of person that has got that bit between his teeth that can get down and dirty when required. I don't see it. I don't see it. If you agree, cool. If you don't, let me know in the comments. We'll chop it up in the comments. Guys, I want to appreciate you for every love shown, any comments, likes, subs, all of that good stuff. Much appreciated. Until next time, take care. Peace.